Good morning, everybody. This is Guy Schrader from Naviant, and welcome to today's OnBase Solution Spotlight on the topic of document knowledge transfer and compliance. We'll just get started right away. I think there's a picture of me, so envision that I'm talking to you. I'm Manager of Sales Engineering with Naviant. Have been around this organization about 13 years, have just about that much experience in OnBase also, so have seen many comings and goings in the OnBase world. So a few housekeeping items. You are muted due to the GoToWebinar, so if you do need to communicate, please use the chat box that you see. And there's going to be a survey at the completion of this webinar. Please take the time to complete that and share your feedback and suggestions for future webinars. So today's agenda on document knowledge transfer and compliance. As typical, we're going to go through what it is, why you might need it. We'll go through a demonstration. That's the show me portion. And recap with what does it do, how much does it cost, and how do you ultimately get that module into your OnBase system. So what is it? Document knowledge transfer enables your organization to rapidly distribute your required reading documents and media to the entire workforce and assess their comprehension and audit compliance. Now, I'm not sure how many people know document knowledge transfer historically, but a recent change to DKT is the ability to include the tests and the assessments, so that assessing the comprehension is a new component that was built into version 13 of OnBase. It ensures that all employees have the most up-to-date version of all the required reading materials that are available, that we publish deadlines to make sure that they review and acknowledge those documents within the time frame specified. With that compliance testing component, you can now gauge the employee's understanding of the content within those documents and have scoring reports and test certificates that are archived into OnBase as further proof that that employee understands that particular content. So some of the concepts that we're going to go through here before I get into the demonstration. For starters, you have documents. I think you understand that OnBase stores all kinds of different content and documents. Any of those documents, any content that you have, can be sent through document knowledge transfer. So that could be a scanned document, it could be a Word document, could be a video, could be an audio file. It really doesn't make a difference. But that's where we start, is with the documents. A system administrator, an OnBase admin, has to create reading groups. And these are going to be groups of users that are going to be exposed to all of the content that we put through that particular reading group. So that piece needs to be set up, but then you have reading group administrators who can control the membership of those reading groups. So to really compare and contrast those two, the system administrator just needs to create the base reading group. The reading group administrator has the capability of controlling who is a member of those reading groups. And by the way, if you add a new employee that comes onto your organization that is now part of a standard OnBase group, that individual is then going to be pushed all of the documentation that has been published that has not expired. So 6 months from today, a new employee starts, they're going to see all of that documentation that I put into that reading group over the last 6 months. So it's a great way to get employees up to speed. There's also the concept of approval groups here. They're optional. You don't have to use them, but think, as soon as you take a document and say, I want to add that to a reading group, without the approval group, boom, it's there. So the approval group is really that second set of eyes to make sure, is this the correct content? Allow us to review it. Once the approval group has looked at that document and they approve it, then it's published to all of the different users that are out there. So a real quick graphic here just to show you. You get your DKT reading group administrators on the left side. Again, they're controlling that membership, but they also have the rights to take any of these documents that are stored in OnBase and publish them to a reading group. So you can see number 2 there up at the top, the required reading assignments. Each of those different documents are then going to go into a reading group. Number 3, as you move down there, your users are going to be notified of any new content that goes into a reading group. They'll have the ability to review that content, approve it, You may give them the option to reject it. Most organizations do not, but most often you get that notification, you read it, you say, yep, I understand it. You may take a test behind it. All of that information is then logged down into step number 4 within that reading group, where your DKT reading group administrators now have the ability to view who has complied, when did they acknowledge that document, what does their assessment look like, did they pass the exam, so on and so forth. So that's the full life cycle effectively behind it. So just a few more things. Why do you need it? Here's some of the key benefits. Again, you can get those documents out very quickly to your entire workforce. Think if you don't have something like this, either you're going to be pushing lots of paper into lots of inboxes, and then frankly you don't have any knowledge of what happens to that document behind the scenes. So it's immediate, centralized access to all of those reading group assignments. You can test that employee comprehension now, making sure that they understand all of the safety concerns, whether it's information systems, workplace conduct, so on and so forth. You have all the audit reports to ensure so that you know who's read these documents, accurately reporting that information, identifying those delinquents. There's capabilities to send an email to everybody that's delinquent within a reading group also, so those are all nice features. You can enforce individual accountability. Again, all of those individuals are going to be required to complete this. If they don't, you know exactly who hasn't, so they have you have complete proof whether they've acknowledged it or whether they haven't or completely completed that assessment. And your organizational risk goes down. Again, you're not dealing with paperwork here. You're not making sure that people come in and sign off on a document saying, I've read this. It's all done online through OnBase, so it's very nicely streamlined. So let's get into a bit of a demo here. Let me change some screens here so that I have access to everything here. Switch into my demo. I'm going to kind of go relatively deep but relatively fast here also. So for starters, as I talked about before, within OnBase configuration, you have to set up the reading groups. So somebody that has access to config is going to do this. In my case, I have a single reading group set up. Just like anything else, pretty easy to create a new one, type a new name, click Create. We're going to actually walk through this one and look at some of the settings here, that you have the ability to go ahead and put in your verbiage for any usage policy. That's going to pop up right when the user first comes into DKT for that particular reading group. The acknowledgement text over on the right side here, when they click Acknowledge, again, you have another screen that pops up saying, by clicking I acknowledge that I understand this content, exactly that verbiage that you see there. You can put some help text within there if employees don't quite know what to do with it. And then there's a bunch of different options, and I'm going to go ahead and just highlight a few of them. Require that all pages are viewed. If you have a scanned document, that means that the user has to navigate all the way to the end of the document before the Acknowledge button is enabled. Require authentication. I could prompt the user with their password after they acknowledge to make sure that they are who they are, that they don't turn their workstation over to somebody else saying, hey, just go through and acknowledge all those things. Well, they'd have to then share their password to do that. Do we want to send a notification with any new document that's published? And then which notification are we sending? So there's we'll see notifications a little bit later here. But do we want to enable a deadline date? Do we want to expire this document after so many days? So you can see some of the different capabilities here. Also, as I talked about those approval groups, so for within this particular DKT reading group, I have it set up saying there's no approval. Typically, you would set up, yes, I want to go ahead and require approval so that when somebody publishes, it automatically goes into that reading group before it's truly published. Just have that second set of eyes that view that information. You can set up different document types to automatically go into a reading group as new documents are archived into OnBase. So in this case, HR procedure, IS policy are two document types that automatically go into this particular reading group so that nobody really has to think, does this document need to go in? Everything goes in automatically. Who are your administrators? You can see here manager. They have all the different components. They can add documents to reading groups. They can administer the membership. They're part of their approval group. They can go through some of the compliance and administrative assistant components. Won't get into all the details there. But here's the notification text that can be set up. When a document is added to a reading group, subject, reading group, notification, and again you can use the different OnBase variables that are available here. The document name has been added to the reading group and you can see all the verbiage. It's just similar to a workflow notification if you're familiar with that particular concept. So that's on the config side. Now, as we switch gears here, I'm going to come into Unity here. By the way, you can do this DKT administration, some components within all of the clients, all of the components you can do within the Unity client, and I'll talk through that, a few of the details. But it's simply accessed by going to the OnBase globe, coming into administration, and your DKT administration. So the concept here is that all of the reading groups that I'm logged in as manager, by the way, all the reading groups that I have access to are going to appear here, that I can take a look at all the members that belong to this all-employee policy and procedure reading group. So again, by groups, by individual users, or whether I want to go ahead and exclude individual users, I have control now as the DKT reading group administrator of who is part of this group. That's not a system admin function. That's really the key of what I wanted to talk about here. So anyways, very simple to add people. For example, if Adam Meyer needs to be included, he's not part of these groups up here already, I can just simply highlight him, move him on over. Adam Myers is now part of that DKT reading group. We're going to come back in here in just a few moments, but I wanted to now take a look just for how easy it is to archive a document. Yes, I do want to save that information. So native document retrieval, anytime that you get to a hit list inside of OnBase, whether it be through native document retrieval, custom queries, folders, whatever the case may be, you're going to have the ability to go ahead and select any one of the documents here. Which one do I want to take here? I want to take the safe work procedure. And either double-clicking on it, or I can do the same thing from the hit list, anywhere where I can say send to. I bet you most of these know this mail recipient. That's the way to email it. But you might not see this reading group because you don't have DKT licensed. You can send this document to a reading group, and then that's going to pop up a little screen here saying which reading group. I only have one, so it's very simple from that perspective. You have some other variables saying when do I make this document available. The key here is that you can set this to a future date. So you might want to prepare on a Friday or earlier in the week for something that needs to go out and be distributed on Monday, so you don't have to do it right at that particular moment. When does the user need to read this document by? By default, this reading group was set up saying a 7-day grace period for reading a document from the date that it was available. But obviously I can come down here, do the drop down, and my calendars pop up. I can change that. We'll talk about the concept of a reference document. I'm going to go ahead and hold off on that a little bit. But you have the ability here to add comments. Please read this document now. Okay. And then you can go ahead and add it. There's our approval groups. Again, I've set it up where I'm bypassing the approval groups. So we can go ahead and add that document. You get the confirmation down here. That document was added to the reading group. So beyond that, we talked about the notifications as I set up things within OnBase configuration, that I can come in here and just send and receive all folders. There's my notification with the exact text that I had. Reading group notification, HR procedure for safe work has been added to the reading group, and there's all the verbiage. Again, you can control that within OnBase configuration for what that needs to look like. Plus, you actually can put in a hyperlink to this document if you're using the OnBase web server and you really want to direct all users to interact with these documents within the web server. We can put the hyperlink within here so that the user automatically can just click on that hyperlink. They'd authenticate to OnBase, be taken directly to DKT, and continue from there. So that's your notification piece. All right. before I really come in and take a look at things from the user perspective, since I've added that document, I want to come back in and talk about a little different concept within administration here, and that's the tests and surveys component. Again, this is the piece that was added with OnBase 13. What we need to do here is, for starters, set up all of the test questions, associate those questions to the test, and then associate that test to a document. So there is a logical progression here. I've already set up this where I have a group called sales, a group of tests. I only have a single quiz or test that I put into the system, but when I select that, I can see over here on the right side, here's all my test options. What's the name of it? What's the type? So you have tests and you also have surveys. There is a survey component to this, so think it's just a little bit different, that after somebody reads a document, instead of testing them on it, you just give them a survey. Hey, was this information understandable? You know, on what scale, 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever the case may be. Your choice for how you set up those surveys, but I'm going to focus on tests here. Any instructions for this particular test? Do we want to generate a certificate? So this is a concept also that after somebody goes through this test, this assessment, we can go ahead and generate a certificate which will be stored into OnBase saying that this user has completed this assessment on this particular date, this time. So it actually creates an OnBase stored document. Option whether you want to turn that on. I'm going to leave that on in my particular scenario. And then here's the different questions that you have. So I can actually take a look at these and walk through these different questions. For example, this first one, just to move it out to the side, it is a true or false question associated to the sales process questions. And it's just a real little wizard that walks through this. When you're dealing with a true and false, we don't really have to worry about randomizing our answers. But I continue. There's my question text. The goal outcome of the decision phase is a satisfied customer. I have the ability to add a reference document right when they're at this point in time during the question taking process. They could click on a button and it would automatically open up an OnBase stored document if you wanted to give them that type of reference. What are my potential answers? So in my case, true, false. Notice my false, when I look over here, false is the correct answer. You could say yes, no, whatever you wanted for the particular responses with this type of question, and then you can go ahead and give them feedback. After they finish up the assessment, it would walk through the questions and then provide you this particular type of feedback. So again, options whether you want to turn that on or turn that off. That's a true or false. Let's take a look at a multiple choice. It's a little bit different. Multiple choice is different than multiple select. So multiple choice is one of these X number of answers is correct, where multiple select, I can have multiple correct answers. In this case, we can randomize the answers so that when you take one person takes it to the next person taking it, the answers inside there would actually be in a different order. So you can't say just choose the first one. That's not a guarantee. There's our question again. What is phase 3 of the sales process? Our ability to add that reference document. And here, if I wanted to go ahead and, for example, say another one, let me just say test and create. There you can see it automatically pops that down on my bottom here. I'm going to delete that just so that my test looks proper. But my appropriate answers here, prospecting, qualifying, proposal, that is the correct answer, decision. Okay, I think you get the concept here. And again, my feedback. Multiple select is going to be just a little bit different in that case I can go ahead and have multiple correct answers. Here we can see that complete the work is a correct answer. So is follow up with the customer, but the others are not correct answers. Okay? So that's how we set up the exam, and again we need to associate that with a particular document. So what I need to do here is once I have this particular piece up here, I need to come into the DKT assignment and say this quiz associated with this reading group, and I'm going to associate this with my sales process document. And once I click Save, then this particular test and the assessment would then be associated with this document. a logical question that comes up at this point in time. I have to have a document in the reading group before I can associate an exam to it, a test to it. That is correct, but that would be a good reason why you would use approval groups also, because the available documents, even if they're sitting in an approval group, they haven't been distributed to all the public yet, would appear here that you can go ahead and add them and assign that document here. All right, so I'm going to switch gears here. Even though I'm logged in as the same user, I'm going to come in here and actually go through my reading groups, okay, under my knowledge transfer. Again, this can take place within the thick client, within the web client, within the Unity client. But let me talk through a few of the things here that might be specific to one of the clients versus the other. All right. So I was ahead of myself here. Oh, I take that back. My safe work document. Remember, that's the one that I went ahead and added to the reading group. I haven't viewed it. It's not overdue yet because it was just, my deadline date hasn't popped up here. So I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit. So the view that the user would see when they first come into document knowledge transfer is they're going to see their overdue document section first. So the sales process, yeah, it was published a long time ago. It's well beyond my deadline date, so that's the first thing they would see. Others that they haven't viewed would appear next. Any reference documents, so this means that they may have viewed it, but they marked it as a reference. It's on their short list of documents that they may want to come back to at a later point in time and review. That would be the reference section. And all the rest of the documents that they acknowledged, and again, typically we take away the rejected capabilities from our users. But very simply, if they want to take a look at the sales process document, actually I wanted to do the safe work one. I'm not going to acknowledge this, so you'll see that doesn't change anything. I can look at it, and that doesn't change my status. But there's my safe work procedure. Notice my toolbar up here, acknowledge, reject, or mark it as a reference. If I'm just going to say I'm going to come in here and say, yep, I've read through this. Obviously I haven't, but I could read through that. There's the verbiage that we had stated within the reading group saying when somebody acknowledges, give them this warning. Do you agree? Yes, I do. And again, I could prompt them for a password at this point in time, but here you can see that it said that the document was acknowledged. Guess what? It moves down into my acknowledged area. Let's go through the sales process one. Again, I have that exam associated with it, so as I start off, it looks very similar, except I have a couple other options. I need to read through it and acknowledge it first before I can take that exam. So as I click acknowledge, similar verbiage within that. Okay, I'm now going to be tested on the material. All right, again, there's additional verbiage that I can put into this. Let me just walk through that assessment as we go through this. So now it's going through that, the questions and the answers. I must answer 3 questions correctly to pass. Again, all these things are configured within that test. So as I start, here's my questions. What is phase 3? That's the proposal phase. I can just click continue, so it's like a little wizard. Notice my number 1's already been selected, is highlighted, saying that I've already completed it. I can always come back and review any of these prior questions just by clicking on the button or even jumping forward. So it's nice, you don't have to answer the question. Let's see, we need to follow up with the customer as well as complete the work for the repeat business phase. And finally, yeah, that's not the correct goal. Let me finish. Are you sure you're ready to submit? So again, they can cancel and go back and modify any of their answers. But here's our assessment that pops up automatically. I passed 3 of the questions, and here's the feedback that, again, I can walk through those different questions and view all the feedback with additional verbiage. I click on finish. I am all good. I'm done viewing my feedback. Great. And now I got a clean slate. I have a lot of acknowledged documents. Okay, I can come back into any one of these documents and view it in the future. So again, I always have these at quick reference, but you can understand that if I have hundreds of documents that are going through the process that I need to review, I can always flag any one of these that are really important to me as a reference document and later remove it from the reference if I choose. So that's my short list of the documents that might be really important to me. Okay. So back with an administrator hat on. Now I want to come back in and make sure that all of these people are going through and acknowledging these documents. So as I select my all employee policy and procedure group, I have a couple different options here under the reading group administration. I can take a look at my document administration. So these are all the documents that have been added to the reading group where, for example, if I come in and take a look at that safe work, I can see that Cindy Smith acknowledged that. That's who I am. I'm the manager, by the way. The purchasing document, okay, Cindy and Jane are good, but everybody else is delinquent. My OSHA manual, very similar. So this is a quick way at the document level to see who's actually viewed what. But I can also do that from the user level. That now if I want to take a look at, for example, Jane Harper, I can see she's done okay. She's got a couple acknowledged, safe work, she hasn't viewed, there's some delinquents here. I'm logged in as manager again. I've acknowledged most of them with the exception, well, this is actually a leftover document that was out there a long time ago. But anyways, that's how you can take a look to make sure that people are compliant. By the way, if I come back into this document administration, notice I have buttons to email all those people that are delinquent. I can re-add a document. I can remove a document. So you have all those different capabilities here. The other side of things, if I have a test and a survey associated with any particular document, I always have the ability to come in here and view my scoring reports. Again, selecting my different tests and my different users, there's a very brief, hey, that quiz was scored, 3 questions, they passed, yes. The other thing that comes along with that is that as I mentioned before, if I wanted to create those test certificates, I can come in here under my system documents. There's going to be a document type of tests and surveys certificate. That here's the one that I just completed. We have the dates. I can put in the username. Again, manager Cindy Smith. That's my certificate, more or less saying that we've completed this particular course. All right. So very quick demonstration of DKT and some of the capabilities here. Just for a recap, again, what does it do? We have that single intuitive interface. You saw I did all that within the Unity client, and I forgot to mention a few of the specific things for Unity client here. The tests and the surveys component is only accessible through the Unity client and the web client. If you are using the thick client, the tests and the surveys component will not work. Effectively, everything else will work within the different clients that are out there. But anyways, back to the presentation. So you have the single interface where you can read, approve, acknowledge, and take a look at those supporting tests, supporting documents. Again, create that comprehension assessment with all the questions with multiple different types. By the way, you can have essay answers on these tests. The system cannot automatically score essay questions, so there is a component within the tests and surveys administration area where you can actually grade the essays if you wanted to do that. You have that entire auditable historical record of who read what, the test scores, the certificates, automatic reading list distribution to new or existing users. You got those notifications that pop into the system along with it. And again, it's relatively simple to configure and administer this with all the different tests and the tables and analyze the results that come out of it. So what does it cost? This is a little confusing, so bear with me. I'm going to try to do it relatively fast. If you don't own DKT today, a new purchase is going to be $16,000. Okay? You do need to have valid client licenses for all of your users that are going to be using that. If you don't, or if you're going to be expanding this to your entire company, you might have hundreds if not thousands of employees, but you only have a small subset of OnBase client licenses, you can go into the enterprise document knowledge transfer. Now that is $20,000 on top of the $16,000. The enterprise effectively takes away all of that client licensing. So it's through the web access. You do need to have a web server up and running, but now everybody as they're going through that enterprise document knowledge transfer and compliance server, nobody is going to be consuming OnBase concurrent client licenses. If you already have DKT, they changed things significantly. Your initial investment was $8,000 for just the base DKT piece, so it's an upgrade of $8,000 to get the compliance component to it. And again, for the enterprise component, if you already have the enterprise, that would cost you $10,000 initially. Excuse me. So that'll be another $10,000 delta to bring you up to speed. The compliance testing administration is performed through the Unity client, as you saw. So the reason I have that there is because it really does require that you have the Unity client server license in order to use the testing and the surveys component. You can use all of this without the tests and surveys through all of the other clients. So if you don't have Unity client server, that would be the main limitation. Just a couple of complementary products. Workflow. You can add documents automatically to DKT reading groups through workflow actions. So think of any process that you might have that dovetails nicely into workflow. Report Services also has some very nice reports that complement what you can get out of the DKT administration piece. There's a whole subsection of Report Services reports. So with that, how do you get it? Talk with your Naviant account executive. We'd be more than happy to talk through things further here. And with that, I'm going to leave a few moments for questions. Are there any questions? I don't see anything as of yet. I'll stick on here for a few minutes, so feel free to drop off if you have other things to take care of, but just some upcoming events for Naviant. We have an executive webinar coming up in July on the 8th for best-in-class accounts payable strategies and key metrics. Feel free to join us for that. The next Naviant support webinar is going to be on version 14 of OnBase, and that's on July 16th, by the way. OnBase 14 we expect to be released either later this month or early July. We're seeing some good indications that that's coming up very soon. And let's not forget about the Naviant ECM Leadership Summit in Milwaukee at the Harley-Davidson Museum on October 13th and 14th coming on up. So again, thank you so much for your time. I hope that this was a half hour of enlightenment. Sorry for being a few minutes over, but as I mentioned, I'll stick on the line in case there are any questions that happen to pop up. Thank you so much. Have a great day.